Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this video I want to give you a couple of updates because I know a lot of you have subscribed to my channel just because of Old Rusty, and Old Rusty is not forgotten, but I had a lot of other things to do in between. But Old Rusty will come back for sure this season with a lot of work, and we've done already a lot of work on Old Rusty. But let me show you what is going to come up in the next couple of months on Old Rusty. The fenders will be blasted, epoxy coated, and then painted black. But before we can do that, we will have to do first of all some welding on these front fenders. And overall the fenders are not in a too bad of a state. They are solid, however at the edge here they are really rusted through. You see these holes, so we will have to make some panels for that. That's a little bit of welding, not a big job to do. But let me show you the step, that's a different story. So this is the other fender, and you can see that the bottom part is really rotted through. So we're going to cut it off along this line and then put a panel up. Now the steps are something else. They are not very complex to build, but we have to rebuild them from scratch because they are really in a state where you can no longer recover them. Look at the big hole that we have right here. So that's a serious hole. So that's going to be like a day's job to build those two steps, and probably about a day's job to build the two fenders back to normal condition. If there's anything good on Old Rusty, then it certainly is the chassis, and that is in a really good state. There is no real work to be done on this except blasting it, then epoxy coating it, and then finally finishing it off with a glossy black coat. So that's what we're going to do with the chassis. There is one or two small areas where we have a little bit of rust, and that's one of those areas on the chassis where we have a little bit of rust, and that's actually the only place that I could find. But that's about it, and for the rest the chassis is very intact. We'll remove the rear axle, check all the bearings and all the seals, and then clean it up. Now for the moment I don't see any leaks, so I think this rear axle is still in a fairly good state because this was a truck that was very well built. We're also going to disassemble the leaf springs, and as you can see this is actually a double stack, so that is very strong. They look in a pretty good shape, so we're just going to clean them up and then check them out and then put it all back together. And the connection between the chassis and the leaf springs in those days was very well done, and in fact there's almost no play on it because they had greasing nipples on it, something you don't see anymore today. In the old days people really built things to last. The chassis is not welded nor bolted. Instead it's using huge rivets. Gearbox is a 3-speed gearbox, and we're going to take it out and clean it up and inspect it and replace the parts that need to be replaced, if any. The original electrical system is based on 6 volts negative earth. Now I'm not going to leave that in, I'm going to change this. As you can see it's in a bad shape anyhow. So I'm going to change this to a 12 volts system that will improve the starting and also the ignition. The gas tank overall is in a fairly good state, so there's no rust on it, that's the good point, or no leaks. Yet inside there is quite some debris inside, as I could see, and it smells just awful. Oh, you get sick from it. Anyway, so all this needs to be cleaned up and repainted and then put back in place. And for the brakes, we've got drum brakes all around the vehicle, and we will have to take the brakes apart and check the lining on it and replace it. We also need to check the cylinders for the brakes, change all the hoses because they are kind of deteriorated. And then we can look on the uprights, and they look reasonable, all right. I don't see a lot of play on them, and probably the reason for that is that they had greasing nipples on them, and they have been greased quite often. So that is a good point on these old vehicles, as I mentioned before. So guys, quite a bit of work. All the way in the back you find actually the steering. And here you have the steering house, very rigid, bolted down very well. There's a bit of play on the steering wheel, but again, this truck didn't have any power steering, so I can imagine people have been pulling very hard on this one to maneuver the truck. So that is probably some play in the steering house that we probably might need to have fixed or corrected. But still, we're going to take it apart, and probably there's some oil inside that we need to change. And there's also a greasing nipple on it, so I'm sure we can get this really well reconditioned. It seems like they have extended the chassis a bit, and they welded on some pieces on both sides and on that side. And in fact, they did it to hold, most likely to hold the spare wheel underneath here. So I'm going to grind all this off because that's not necessary. That's not part of the original truck. And it's also bent and crooked, so we're going to change that and get rid of that. All right, so still a lot of work. And then we still have the bonnet. It's in a good shape, there's no rust on it, we just need to blast it, epoxy coat it, and then paint it together with the front grille. In fact, I have another front grille sitting in the back here. I don't know if you can see it, so I have two of them. I got some spare doors, but now let's talk a little bit about the doors. And you might remember that the doors were already been rebuilt in previous episodes of Old Rusty, but they are not finished yet. I haven't painted them yet, I haven't blasted them yet, and the reason for that is that I still need to find the glazing that goes inside here. And I haven't found the glazing, nor did I found the rubbers for it. Now the glazing, I can get the glazing built for me or cut out or out of a bigger piece of glass, special glass. That is not an issue. But the rubbers and the actual mechanism to wind the windows up and down, that's a bit more tricky. So I'm still looking around, and if I can't find it, then I have to build my own. So that's going to be a video altogether on the glazing and the winding mechanism. So as you can see, guys, there's still a lot of work to be done, but we have done already a lot of work. So now let us go and check on the parts that we have already completed, because the way it looks like right now is that we didn't do too much on Old Rusty, but we did. And you might remember that we had a lot of work on working on the cabin. And here is the cabin. And the rebuild of the cabin was a major effort. We had to re-weld the sills and a lot of other parts that were actually completely rusted away or totally missing. But at the end, it turned out to be quite all right. And you can see all this on my YouTube channel on how we built this cabin back to its original state. We already have reworked the engine block to a large extent. Let me take off the parter cam. And then you might remember that we reconditioned the oil pump, that we put new pistons in, new sleeves, new bearings, all that. And that also we worked out the distribution, we put a new chain up and new sprockets. So all that was done. So in essence, the block is almost ready, with the exception that I still need the seals here to go under the carter pan, and I don't have them yet, so I need to get those first, but I hope to get them within a week or two or so we can continue building the engine. So let me put this back up so we don't get any dirt or debris inside. And there is more good news. And that good news is that I have my cylinder head back from the machine shop. They installed new exhaust valves. The inlet valves were able to stay. The springs were good. And they actually mounted it for me, so I can't show that to you now. But also, I bought brand new followers for the camshaft, brand new push rods, and I have a new rocker arm. You remember this rocker arm was really worn out? Now I think the cylinder head looks pretty good. Look at that, how nice that is compared to how it was. So the next video on Old Rusty, which is in about 2 weeks or so, you will see me mounting this cylinder head, the push rods, the followers. We're going to tighten it all up, and then we're going to close it all up. We will rework the carburetor because that's still a little bit of work, and I have it on the side here. So here is that Solex carburetor. That's not a major job to do, so we'll do that real quick in between. And then when that is all done, I'm going to place the engine on the rig and we're going to start it up outside the truck. I know it's been a while that I posted videos on it, but a lot of it had to see with missing parts. I could have started on the chassis, but I don't want to start on the chassis when the engine is still open. I want to finish up that engine first, so that's why it took me a while. I know a lot of you subscribed because of Old Rusty, and sometimes I feel a bit sorry that I let you down, that you don't get the updates in time. But that's just the way it is, because I have a full-time job and a house to rebuild and some other projects. And remember, guys, I also have a couple of other projects that I'm working on at the same time besides Old Rusty. That's this DAX, which I'm rebuilding almost from scratch. And we've done a lot of work on that, and you can also see it on my YouTube channel. I have a special line for all these videos. We're going to put in very shortly this Pinto engine that we have reconditioned and we have reworked to a stage 2 engine. We still need to put the electronic ignition up, and I'm going to show you that on how that's been done. I also will adjust the Weber carburetors. There was a 3-part series on how to build or rebuild Weber carburetors. So now we're going to do the tuning once the engine is inside. Then we're going to do some body work on it, because still the body has to be redone to a large extent. So in other words, I have to repaint it, And then that vehicle should be ready, and I think this is going to be a nice track car. But that's not the only one. I still have Project Orange to wrap up, and then of course I have the Lotus Elise to be finished, and then I have a couple more little projects on tractors that I want to do this winter, but I only have so much time. So let's have a look on Project Orange. And if you like MGB GTs, then check my Project Orange. I have a couple of videos on this. We have rebuilt this MG. This was a standard MG Chrome, and we modified it to a Sebring model with a kit on it. I think it looks quite good, but of course that's my own impression, and your own babies always look nice. We've done a lot of work on this. We converted it from a normal 1.8 liter to a V8. But there's still a little bit of work on it, so I'm going to convert the rear suspension from leaf springs to coil springs, and we're going to convert the rear brakes to disc brakes. And I have another issue with the engine, and I'm going to show you what that is, and for that I also will have to find a solution, and maybe you guys have a solution for me. And the only problem we are having is that when the engine is hot and we stop, we can't get it started up again unless we wait about 15 to 20 minutes. And the reason for that problem is the Edelbrock carburetor. We have the Performer intake manifold on it and the CMF 500 carburetor on it. And I assume that the problem we're having is that the heat of the engine when we stop is vaporizing the fuel inside the carburetor, and it creates air bubbles. And that's probably the reason why we can't get it started. But that will all come in another video. And if you like more modern cars, then we have the Lotus Elise. This Elise I bought from a scrapyard because there was a total loss, and we have it totally rebuilt. The clamshell was replaced in the front and the back. We changed the crash box, and a lot of other work was done on the engine, on the suspension, on the brakes, on the bearings, all that. So if you're interested in this, then check the channel as well. And there's one more video to come, maybe two, on the installation of the front clamshell. You can see that we already have it mounted slightly after we repaired it, and there's the whole video on how we painted it and how we repaired it, but we still need to install it, and I'm going to show you that very soon in a video on how you can best mount that front clamshell together with the access covers and all that. And for those of you that subscribe to the channel for the Massey Ferguson 35, where we actually fixed the cylinder head with some cold metal, and there was a lot of debate on that, it's still running, and it's now been 2 years. So I might do a couple more videos on the Massey Ferguson, on how we're changing the clutch and maybe how we're going to change or recondition the hydraulic pump. But I have another tractor that I need to work on very soon. And that tractor is a David Brown Selectomatic 990. Still in pretty good condition. I use it quite often to cut the grass. But we're going to rebuild this one. We're going to clean it all up, get it a fresh coat of paint, you know, and do all the maintenance on that. So I will have probably about 10 videos coming up on the David Brown. So folks, there's still going to be a lot of videos that are going to come out on cars and vehicles and engines. Not that much on motorbikes. I've done a couple. Unless people want me to do some, then I will do that, but that has to be on request. And if I can get the bike. There will be some more videos on do-it-yourself on your house, especially rebuilding the tower room. And I'm so happy to have you all as subscribers. I have some very dedicated subscribers. They always comment on every video I play, so I really enjoy that. I'm always trying to answer you. If you didn't get an answer in time, then I apologize, because I can't answer everything within a certain time frame. So I only have so much time a day, and I'm having a full-time job. So I hope you keep on enjoying my videos, and please comment and provide criticism. I have no issue, be it positive or negative, but I don't like insults, but like all of us, I guess. But luckily, none of you do that, so I'm a very happy guy. I'll see you later in my next videos, and take care. Bye-bye.